Ganta, your average high school student with an impeccable ability to ignore homework, is scrolling through his phone when Mimi, his ever-energetic classmate, strolls in and greets him. Without skipping a beat, she asks about their absent classmate Yamaku before dropping her bag with the confidence of someone who owns the place. The conversation shifts to their upcoming school trip to Deadman Wonderland, a prison doubling as an amusement park. "Who thought that was a good idea?" Ganta mutters. As they reminisce about the Tokyo of old, Yamaku finally arrives, scolding Ganta for ditching him while casually polishing off the last bite of Ganta's breakfast. The bell rings, and just as Ganta thinks life might settle down, he senses something strange. He glances outside and sees a man floating ominously, bloody hands outstretched and cape ripped in just the right places to scream, "Villain." Before Ganta can process this, the red man hurls a glowing ring into the classroom, sending everyone into chaos. When Ganta wakes up, he's greeted by silence and the wreckage of what used to be his classroom. Blood and debris are everywhere, and in the middle of it all is the red man holding a mangled body like it's a trophy. Before Ganta can scream or run, the red man walks up and shoves a glowing red stone into his chest, knocking him out cold. Ganta wakes up in a hospital only to be greeted by the police. The charge? Mass murder. His protests about the red man fall on deaf ears. Enter Tamaki, his public defender, who promises to help, but his overly slick demeanor makes it hard to believe. The trial is a disaster, and Ganta is sentenced to death. As he's dragged off, Mimi's father, the perfect example of unbiased parenting, beats him up for good measure. And things go from bad to worse when a fake confession video suddenly surfaces. "Wow, my luck just can't get any better," Ganta mutters. Ganta is left with nothing but disbelief as the world turns against him. Arriving at Deadman Wonderland, Ganta discovers that the prison runs on its own twisted rules. Makina, the stern captain, explains the collars they're forced to wear: GPS trackers, tasers, and poison dispensers. When another inmate steals from Ganta, Makina quickly slices him across the chest without batting an eye. Message received, Ganta thinks. Later, at the prison worksite, Ganta is haunted by memories of his dead classmates. Just as he's wishing for everything to end, a white-haired girl drops in, literally, and swings a metal rod at him. "You don't really want to die, do you?" she asks, grinning. The girl, who introduces herself as Shiro, somehow manages to cheer him up despite the attempted assault. Their moment is interrupted by three inmates who pick a fight with Ganta. Shiro steps in and easily takes them down, but one knocks her out with a shovel. Ganta tries to fight back, but ends up on the ground again. Meanwhile, Tamaki reads Ganta's file with glee, marveling at how lucky Ganta is to have survived an encounter with the infamous Red Man. Back at the worksite, an explosion sends a massive red ball hurtling toward Ganta. He braces for impact, but suddenly taps into the power of the red stone in his chest, using his blood to destroy the ball. Well, that's one way to make an entrance. Elsewhere, a desperate prisoner holds someone hostage for candy, but Makina, ever the stoic, checks his collar and announces his doom. Time's up. The man's head pops, and other inmates munch on candy, the prison's most valuable resource, which extends the timer on their deadly collars. Ganta, realizing he's running out of time himself, rushes to find Shiro, who's perfectly fine. She declares with childlike obliviousness that they're now eternal best friends. Sure, why not? Makina reviews footage of Ganta's survival, baffled by what she sees. She recalls Tamaki's vague promise to cancel Ganta's accident and decides to keep a close eye on him. Meanwhile, at the infirmary, Ganta learns that his life-saving candy is missing, likely lost during all the chaos. A mysterious inmate casually brushes off his injuries from earlier and introduces himself. Then Shiro, ever the lovable idiot, crashes in from the ceiling, excitedly suggesting they join an event called the Dog Race. Explains it's an obstacle course death trap where winners earn points, the prison's currency. You can buy anything with points, from smokes to booze to, life-saving candy. Despite being an athletic disaster, Ganta signs up, lying to Makina about reading the rules. Smooth move. Later reports Ganta's participation to Tamaki. While in the locker room, Ganta meets Kozuji, aka the Pulverizer, an absolute menace of a man who immediately picks a fight. Kozuji demands everyone play along and warns against using violence to win. Ironic, considering his behavior. Ganta mutters under his breath, calling them animals, and Kozuji overhears, threatening Ganta's life unless he smiles. Ganta forces a grin, but curses his cowardice. Shiro, ever the wild card, brings him snacks, but Kozuji tries to attack her, only to be stopped by Makina. She puts Kozuji in his place with a death glare level warning. Before the race starts, Ganta finally reads the rulebook and learns the grim truth. The collars pump poison into inmates' necks, and only candy can counteract it, for a steep price of 100,000 points. That's also the exact prize for winning the race. Tamaki, ever the sadistic puppet master, cranks the race's danger level up to 11, brushing off concerns for the kids watching. When the race begins, it's a bloodbath disguised as entertainment, with the audience mistaking real injuries for cool effects. Ganta barely survives, while Shiro somehow has the time of her life. Kozuji takes the chaos up a notch, using his own teammates as meat shields. Ganta hesitates, realizing that following the rules has never worked out for him. He pushes forward, reaching the final showdown, a battle royale for the Deadman ball. Ganta snatches the ball and dodges deadly traps while Kozuji demands to know why he's fighting so hard, given his death row status. Fed up, Ganta whacks Kozuji with the ball, defiantly declaring that from now on, he'll live by his own rules. After a heated struggle, Shiro ends up with the ball, but the platform beneath her collapses. Injured from protecting Ganta throughout the race, Shiro throws the ball to him, prioritizing his victory. Ganta catches her just in time as the race ends with no clear winner. Ganta, now candyless, shrugs it off, deciding it doesn't matter as long as he and Shiro can still eat together. Before the next Deadman showdown, grab your candy and hit like. Subscribe unless you're scared of the next round. Meanwhile, Tamaki faces backlash over the race's body count, but reminds the board he's untouchable. Back at the prison, Ganta writes a letter to Mimi's father, begging for justice. Yo, now revealed as Ganta's cellmate, offers him a replacement candy bar. Despite its awful taste, Ganta's spirits lift, and he promises to repay Yo's kindness. Yo, however, smirks inwardly, knowing Ganta is now in his debt. Turns out, Yo's been spying on Ganta for Tamaki in exchange for points. Classic betrayal. Elsewhere, Tamaki learns the Mother Goose system keeping the wretched egg under control is down. As chaos brews, Tamaki takes a secret elevator to the site, while Ganta reminisces about happier times with his friends over ice cream with Yo. At noon, Ganta's crimson crystal flares up, bringing him to his knees in pain. As he looks up, the wretched egg descends, conjuring a tornado that kills several prisoners and injures Yo. Determined to protect his friend, Ganta activates his powers, using his blood to attack the wretched egg. The Red Man retreats, leaving Tamaki exhilarated by the new development in his twisted game. Ganta wakes up in a hospital bed with Shiro by his side. While she insists the earlier chaos was a terrorist attack, Ganta remembers the Red Man and his strange powers. Eavesdropping on nearby prisoners, he learns that the Red Man is held in a mysterious G-block. Elsewhere, Makina briefs her guards, labeling Ganta a potential weapon and issuing a code red. She orders his immediate arrest and deploys the Necro-Macro, a deadly robot last used against a violent inmate years ago. As lockdown is announced, Tamaki mocks Makina's heavy-handed response. Meanwhile, Yo debates continuing his spy mission, unnerved by Ganta's growing importance. During the lockdown, Ganta and Shiro attempt to sneak through the hallways but are intercepted by Yo, who warns them against causing more trouble. Ganta refuses to turn himself in, determined to prove the Red Man's real. Yo drops a bombshell. There is no G-block. But Shiro, with her usual cryptic weirdness, seems to know more than she lets on. Ganta storms in, desperate for answers, only to find Shiro visibly upset over something. Before he can process what's wrong, a hulking robot closes in with a brutal attack. Shiro, however, mentions a secret passage and kicks open a vent, much to the boys' dismay. The trio crawls through the vent as the Necro-Macro closes in. They tumble into a dark hallway, only for the robot to break through the wall. Shiro finds another vent, but the Necro-Macro corners them. Thinking fast, Yo disables the robot with quick reflexes. Finally, they reach G-block, only for the Necro-Macro to break through again, ready to attack. At Makina's office, her subordinates nervously report that they've lost track of the group and that the Necro-Macro has gone offline. The news sends her into a fiery rage. Meanwhile, Necro-Macro prepares for another attack, but Shiro interrupts by kicking it away in frustration, redirecting her anger at Ganta for not treating her like a proper friend. Her tirade blinds her to the danger behind her. Necro-Macro readies its weapon. Ganta's desperate warning reaches her, just as crimson tendrils of blood obliterate the machine in a brutal display of power. From the shadows, a man emerges, playing with the very blood that destroyed the robot, and mutters, "Slice." He casually approaches the wreckage and smashes Necro-Macro's head, all while wearing a deranged grin. Ganta, connecting the dots, assumes he must be the Red Man and launches an attack. The stranger, reveling in the chaos, slices his own skin to weaponize his blood, conjuring jagged crimson blades. "Call me Crowclaw," he declares, grinning. He easily fends off Ganta's assault, tauntingly asking if the boy might be the infamous woodpecker. Elsewhere, Tamaki conducts a virtual meeting with Wonderland's patrons, hyping up the spectacle of Woodpecker versus Crow. However, the festivities are cut short when he's alerted to Crow's rampage outside G-Block. Back at the scene, Crow toys with Ganta, goading him into a fight. Though Ganta summons a weapon and charges, Crow effortlessly cuts it apart, mocking him all the while. Desperate, Ganta realizes he needs to bleed to activate his branch of sin. Injuring himself, he fires a blood projectile at Crow. While the attack shatters Crow's blades, it barely phases the man, who sneers and compliments Ganta's spirit. The boy's rage falters as he realizes Crow isn't the Red Man. Crow, or rather Senji Kiyaza, reveals that he's just one of many Deadmen who can wield the branch of sin. Before Ganta can process this, masked soldiers ambush them with anesthetic darts. Shiro, furious at seeing Ganta incapacitated, leaps into action, taking down soldiers with brutal efficiency before they are both captured. In custody, Tamaki taunts Ganta, revealing he was the boy's lawyer and had falsified the confession that landed him in Wonderland. Ganta's anger flares as he attempts to attack Tamaki using his blood, but the promoter electrocutes him, all while gleefully describing the upcoming Carnival Corpse battle, a gladiatorial deathmatch for Branch of Sin users. Meanwhile, Makina storms toward the director's quarters, outraged by Tamaki's unchecked chaos. She's blocked by attendants but doesn't back down. Inside the darkened room, the director lies in a state of decay, connected to a web of medical tubes. The Carnival Corpse begins with great fanfare. Ganta faces off against Senji. Both fighters self-inflict wounds to activate their abilities. Ganta struggles to land a proper hit, his blood projectiles weak and draining his energy quickly. Senji, unimpressed, chastises Ganta's wastefulness and predicts his downfall. In the control room, Tamaki and his team monitor the fight. They discuss Ganta's potential connection to the Red Hole phenomenon, intent on dissecting him should he lose. At the brink of defeat, Ganta recalls meeting Shiro in his childhood, drawing strength from the memory. He devises a plan and distracts Senji with a falling bell before landing a decisive blow to the man's chest. The crowd roars as the match concludes. In the aftermath, Senji is subjected to the grotesque penalty game, losing his right eye as punishment. Shiro and Yo, meanwhile, cause chaos elsewhere in the facility. Yo impersonates a guard to turn off the electricity, while Shiro creates a massive distraction, leaving Yo in awe of the damage she caused. Back in Block G, Ganta meets a distressed girl named Minatsuki and offers to help her escape. She tells him about her harsh life and hatred for the Carnival, but their escape plan crumbles when guards catch them, as Ganta learns she is his next opponent, codenamed Hummingbird. During their match, Hummingbird's demeanor shifts dramatically, revealing a ruthless alter ego. Her attacks force Ganta to fight back, but the battle is interrupted when Yo reveals her true identity, his sister. Yo promises to save his sister Minatsuki from Wonderland and reduce her prison sentence using the cast points he's been saving. As the guards prepare to remove him, Tamaki tells them to let him stay, enjoying the drama unraveling before the audience. Ganta, determined to expose Minatsuki's manipulative nature, advances, but she slashes his leg, making him collapse. She plays the victim again, but Ganta rises to confront her, only for Yo to shield her. Inwardly, Minatsuki mocks them both as fools, readying her whip to punish them. However, Yo reveals he witnessed her role in their father's death, a setup that once led him to mistakenly believe he was responsible. Calmly, he assures her there's no need for lies. He knows her true self. He promises to protect her, but this only enrages Minatsuki further. She binds him and lashes him with her blood whip. Ganta tries to intervene, but she recounts Yo's flaws, accusing him of foolish devotion. Despite her wrath, Ganta insists Yo's actions are a sacrifice for her freedom. Minatsuki unleashes a flurry of attacks, using Yo as a human shield. As they discuss their mother's abandonment during the Red Hole disaster, a stray bullet ricochets, destabilizing Minatsuki and freeing Yo. Taking her chance, Minatsuki pins Ganta's hands, but he headbutts her, knocking her unconscious. The game ends with the crowd clamoring for Ganta to kill her. Meanwhile, the director is shown observing the unfolding chaos, intrigued by Ganta's actions. He walks into another room, trying to awaken her for a mysterious purpose, and instructs Shiro to wake up, announcing that the lullaby has finally ended. Shiro and the director soon clash in a fierce battle. Back at the hospital, Ganta apologizes to Yo for defeating his sister. A sudden quake shakes the room, and Minatsuki's bed rolls toward a glass cabinet. The shards remind her of her childhood trauma, her mother abandoning her in a collapsing shed. As Yo protected her then, he does now. Reluctantly, she removes the glass shards from his arm. Yo promises never to leave her, dismissing her guilt over their father's death, reminding her she was unaware of her powers back then. Watching them, Ganta feels a sharp pang of memory. He realizes Shiro was his childhood friend. In the present, Shiro defeats the old man, encountering the mechanical body of the Red Man. Wearing his mask, she reveals her identity as the Wretched Egg, grinning wickedly. The prison is in chaos as guards scramble to repair the damage. Ganta encounters Senji, who teases him about his victory over Minatsuki. When Ganta apologizes for his lost eye, Senji laughs it off, advising him to rely on techniques beyond his Ganta gun. Embarrassed, Ganta shyly requests a better name, one like his favorite superhero moves. Meanwhile, Makina learns of restricted files related to the Red Hole disaster. Elsewhere, Tamaki is briefed on Ganta's condition, the red crystal in his chest linked to remnants of the decade-old calamity. Frustrated by limitations, Tamaki schemes to seize power. Ganta finds Minatsuki unfazed by her upcoming penalty game and learns Yo is pursuing the officer who took his cast card. As Ganta follows, a Deadman ambushes him, testing his reflexes. Meanwhile, Yo successfully retrieves his cast points but runs into Tamaki. Tamaki coldly informs him that buying back sentence time isn't possible in Block G. Furious, Yo attacks, but is easily overpowered by Genkaku, one of Tamaki's men. Later, Ganta learns Karako is part of a rebel group called Scar Chain, led by Nagi. Their goal? Take down Deadman Wonderland from the inside. Nagi invites Ganta to join, but Ganta is focused on helping Minatsuki. Suddenly, the TV announces the start of Minatsuki's punishment. Nagi discreetly makes a call. The nurse mocks Minatsuki as she prepares the cruel body part gamble. Though usually stoic, Minatsuki is visibly terrified. To everyone's surprise, Minatsuki's punishment is just a haircut. Nagi arranged this as a gesture of goodwill, hoping to convince Ganta to join the rebels. But before they can discuss further, Genkaku interrupts. Armed with a guitar, he's ready to fight. Just as things get heated, Shiro bursts in, unleashing an absurdly named attack and declaring herself Atsuman. Genkaku retreats, and the rebels quickly warm up to Ganta after Shiro's heroics. The rebels introduce Ganta to their team, including Rokuro, their tech expert. A bartender grows curious about Shiro, who nonchalantly mentions she's been staying in the women's locker room longer than anyone. Meanwhile, Makina plans to steal Tamaki's confidential records while he's busy with a week-long safety inspection. The rebels, on the other hand, strategize a mass jailbreak during the same time. Rokuro warns them to be wary of the Undertakers, Tamaki's elite squad tasked with neutralizing Deadman. Rokuro shows hacked footage of Genkaku dodging Ganta's attack, but Ganta insists that's not how it happened. Accusing Ganta of being a lying brat, Rokuro tells Nagi the kid is just a reckless child who doesn't deserve to be part of the group. Ganta, not having officially joined yet, fires back with a string of insults before storming off like a moody teen. Meanwhile, Tamaki, because he's completely normal, decides to bowl using his father's severed head, declaring himself the winner. Elsewhere, Senji loses his cool after hearing Ganta went toe-to-toe with an Undertaker. When Ganta mentions Nagi, it strikes a nerve. Senji explains how Nagi was forced to fight his own wife in a twisted match. Nagi intentionally lost, but the cost was steep: his vocal cords and, tragically, his wife. They tried to escape, but Genkaku cut their hopes short with a single fatal shot. Feeling like a jerk for his earlier tantrum, Ganta apologizes to Nagi, admitting he knows all too well the need for revenge. But Nagi surprises him by saying his fight isn't about vengeance, it's about freedom. He reveals he has a baby girl waiting for him outside. Ganta, baffled by Nagi's ability to keep his anger in check, asks Shiro about her greatest wish. True to her carefree nature, she says she just wants to eat endlessly. When Ganta presses her for a serious answer, she talks about the big, shiny circle outside. Ganta realizes she means the Ferris wheel and promises to take her someday. Meanwhile, Gaku, thinking about his broken guitar, receives a replacement and overhears a report from Roku, a traitorous informant. Back at the rebel hideout, Kurako can barely contain her excitement for the upcoming mission, but Nagi advises her to save her energy. Ganta shows up to apologize again, this time to the whole group, but they're surprisingly cool about it. He tries to keep Shiro from getting involved, but she stubbornly refuses. He threatens to cancel their Ferris wheel trip, which finally gets her to back down, though Kurako assures her Ganta's just being protective. Nagi reveals their mission is twofold: escaping and exposing Deadman Wonderland's dirty secrets. He shows a data chip packed with incriminating evidence against Tamaki that they must smuggle out. When the plan kicks off, chaos ensues. Alarms blare, security panics, and Nagi, along with Rokuro, sneaks into the control room. The group faces challenges immediately. A necro-macro sprays acid, injuring a member and weakening a bridge. Kurako hands Ganta the data chip and stays behind to fight the robot, giving the others a chance to escape. Kurako's past is briefly revealed. Her bell necklace is a symbol of trust from Nagi, who saw more in her than just her combat skills. In the present, she reflects on how Nagi gave her purpose and prepares for a potentially fatal last stand. Meanwhile, the group waits for Nagi and Rokuro to activate the elevator. In the control room, Nagi works on the elevator, but gets interrupted by Hibana, a creepy little girl who claims she's just finished her homework and chores. She's not as innocent as she looks. Nagi realizes too late that Rokuro has betrayed them, and Hibana's weapon neutralizes his branch of sin. Though she's ordered to spare him, she opts for a sadistic death by 1,000 cuts approach. Nagi taunts her, calling her a child and pitying her parents, which triggers her rage. She attacks viciously, but Nagi uses a clever diversion to activate the elevator before collapsing. The rebels, unaware of Nagi's fate, head for the elevator, only to find themselves caught in an Undertaker trap. Genkaku is disappointed Shiro isn't with them, but follows orders to detain the group. Meanwhile, Nagi confronts Rokuro, who smugly reveals Tamaki knew about their plan all along and wanted a more dramatic takedown. One rebel, gravely injured, entrusts Ganta with the data chip, declaring him the new leader of Scar Chain before dying. Meanwhile, Shiro, wandering away from the chaos, overhears Nagi's desperate cry for help. At the same time, Ganta confronts Gaku but is outmatched. Genkaku taunts Ganta, teasing an alternate, villainous ending for his hero, Aceman. Shiro, desperate to protect Ganta, begs for the data chip like a dog before snatching it and tossing it into the fire. However, the group is horrified. To them, Shiro's actions appear treacherous. Confused and hurt, Shiro insists she only wanted to keep Ganta safe, but her reasoning falls flat. Ganta, frustrated and heartbroken, realizes this is why he wanted her to stay behind. The two get into a scuffle, and Ganta, in a fit of frustration, hits Shiro and tells her to never show her face again. With their mission in ruins, they return to the hideout, frustrated by their failure. Karako stumbles in, looking rough after fighting an acid-spewing robot, and asks what she missed. Ganta explains that Shiro did something completely confusing. As they discuss their next move, Rokuro barges in, and everyone is excited to see him, until they realize Nagi isn't with him. When they ask about Nagi, Rokuro suddenly snaps and demands to know who told them the chip was a bomb. Before they can answer, guards storm in with an Undertaker named Kazuchi. That's when Rokuro reveals he was the one who faked the video that made it look like Ganta was involved in a massacre. Before things can get worse, Senji slashes his way into the room, tearing the guards and Kazuchi apart in seconds. He asks who the strongest enemy is, and someone tells him that he already took out the toughest one. Not impressed, Senji turns his attention to the other guards, but they have a trick. They can neutralize his attacks on impact. Rokuro laughs, saying the guards can cancel out attacks at 20 megapascal per second. Senji just smirks, changes his stance, and slashes faster than the speed of sound, killing them before they can react. Seeing this, Ganta feels completely useless compared to Senji, who couldn't care less about Scar Chain. He's just here for fun. They try convincing him to join their cause, but Senji refuses, saying the world outside is just as bad as prison. At least in here, everything is straightforward. He tells them they're just a bunch of people looking for a leader, and he's not interested. Like a true badass, he leaves without another word. Meanwhile, Nagi is being held hostage by Genkaku, who wants him to become an undertaker. Genkaku then drops a bombshell. Nagi has been brainwashed into thinking he has a daughter waiting for him outside. Of course, Nagi refuses to join the man who killed his wife, so Genkaku starts torturing him and injects him with drugs that force him to remember the truth. Elsewhere, Shiro is sulking about everything when she runs into Todo, the guy who told her about the bomb. Todo makes some cryptic comments that make him seem more than just a new character, maybe someone from the past. Meanwhile, Ganta, feeling weak, asks Senji to train him. Senji agrees, but tells him he needs to own his power. Ganta's training begins. He needs to shoot his blood bullets at supersonic speed. But no matter how hard he tries, he fails. So Senji comes up with a crazy test. He crushes all of Ganta's candy except for one, ties it to a pole, and tells Ganta to shoot it free before his blade cuts it. If he succeeds, he gets his last candy back. Before they can start, Todo walks in, and for the first time Senji looks nervous. Turns out, Todo is the strongest Deadman in Wonderland. But something is off. He's acting strangely affectionate, sneaking up behind Senji and hugging him. Senji is creeped out and asks what happened to him, but Todo just ignores him. Meanwhile, Karako sneaks into the Undertakers disguised as a guard. But her plan goes south when a very drunk Shiro drops out of a vent in front of her. Before she can escape, Genkaku arrives and captures them both. Back at training, Senji gives up on Ganta and tells him to stop before he passes out from blood loss. But in a last burst of effort, Ganta finally fires a supersonic blood bullet. Before he can celebrate, Genkaku appears on a TV screen announcing that he has captured Karako and Shiro. Despite being weak, Ganta rushes off to save them. On the way, he's ambushed by guards, but is suddenly saved by Minatsuki, who uses a supersonic blood whip attack to wipe them out. She smugly tells Ganta they're even now and leaves. Inside, Ganta shoots at the guards holding Karako and Shiro, but collapses from blood loss. Then, a huge door opens, revealing Nagi, sitting on a couch with tears in his eyes. He suddenly remembers that his wife and child were killed, and his powers go completely out of control, destroying everything in his path. Meanwhile, Genkaku shreds his guitar in the background, because of course he does. In his rage, Nagi tries to kill Shiro, but Ganta jumps in front, taking hit after hit while trying to reason with him. With a mix of talk no jutsu, a small bell from a loved one, and a well-timed slap, Nagi snaps out of it. Just as things calm down, Genkaku stabs Karako in the chest. Furious, Ganta fires his strongest blood bullet, which Genkaku barely blocks. But Genkaku isn't done. He taunts Nagi, saying he left Karako alive so Nagi could finish her off. But Nagi refuses, so Genkaku blows a hole through him instead. Now Genkaku loses it completely. As things spiral, Ganta's collar starts pumping poison into him, because oops, he forgot to eat his candy. Meanwhile, Hibana tries to escape but is killed by Toto, who now has Senji's powers after drinking his blood. And then Shiro awakens. Thanks to the stone in Ganta's chest glowing, Shiro's legs magically heal, and both of them start glowing. In an instant, Ganta fires his most powerful blast ever. Genkaku tries to dodge, but Nagi, using his last bit of strength, holds him in place, making sure he takes the hit. When the dust settles, Karako cradles a dying Nagi. With his last breath, he gives Ganta his final candy and thanks Karako for letting him feel the rain one last time. Meanwhile, Tamaki continues his scheming, while Karako and the others escape. But Ganta chooses to stay behind to protect his friends. And in the final twist, Todo, now obsessed with Ganta's powers, wants to taste them for himself. The episode ends with Shiro singing a lullaby, one that Ganta remembers from the day his classmates were murdered. Realizing what this means, he begs her to stop. And just like that, the anime ends, on a massive cliffhanger. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more suffering.